In the flickering firelight of a modest English sitting room, a woman in a simple white dress sits at a small wooden table, her pen flying across paper in tiny, precise script. Footsteps echo in the hallway. Without missing a beat, she slides a large sheet of blotting paper over her work, folds her hands calmly, and gazes out the window toward the green fields and hedgerows beyond. A servant enters, exchanges a polite smile, and departs. The door creaks shut. Only then does she lift the paper and resume writing. Words of a proud gentleman declaring love to a woman who refuses him with magnificent defiance. This is no ordinary evening. This is Jane Austen in the early 1800s, crafting what would become one of the most beloved novels in history, Pride and Prejudice, while hiding her genius from a world that believed women should remain silent. She asked her family to leave that door creaky on purpose, for the warning. In that single, quiet act of concealment lies the story of a writer who changed literature forever without ever attaching her name to her greatest achievements during her lifetime. The English countryside of the late 18th century was a world of rolling hills, ancient stone churches, and tightly knit rural communities where families lived for generations in the same homes. Social hierarchies were rigid, fortunes determined marriages, and women's futures hung by a delicate thread. It was into this world, on December 16, 1775, in the small Hampshire village of Steventon, that Jane Austen was born. She entered a bustling rectory as the seventh of 8 children, 6 brothers and 1 older sister, into a household that, despite limited money, overflowed with intellect, humor, and boundless affection for books. Her father, George Austen, served as the local clergyman, a gentle and scholarly man whose extensive personal library of more than 500 volumes became young Jane's gateway to adventure. Her mother, Cassandra Lee Austen, brought a lively wit and a slightly elevated social background that sharpened the family's observations of human folly. The rectory echoed with noise, brothers debating, sisters sharing secrets, and endless conversations around the dinner table. Jane and her sister Cassandra, named after their mother, shared everything. A bedroom for most of their lives, dreams, and an intimate correspondence filled with sparkling commentary on neighbors, fashions, and the absurdities of daily life. Cassandra would remain Jane's closest confidant, protector, and first reader until the very end. From childhood, Jane devoured the popular novels of her era, dramatic tales of kidnapped heroines, fainting spells, and wild coincidences. Yet even as a girl of 12, she saw their ridiculousness. She began composing her own stories, bold, satirical parodies that exaggerated every convention until they collapsed into laughter. Tiny plays and miniature novels circulated among her family, performed in the evenings to riotous applause. While other children absorbed the rules of society, Jane learned to dissect them with razor-sharp insight and playful mockery. Her early writings revealed a mind already attuned to the gap between appearance and reality, between what people said and what they truly meant. As she grew into a young woman, Jane lived the typical existence of a gentlewoman of modest means. She attended local assemblies and balls, played the pianoforte with skill, embroidered, walked the countryside paths lined with tall hedges, and visited neighbors. Yet beneath these pleasant routines lay an inescapable truth. For women of her station, marriage was not merely a matter of the heart, it was survival itself. A woman could not inherit property easily, earn a respectable living, or pursue higher education. Without a husband, she remained dependent on male relatives for shelter and security. Jane observed these pressures with unflinching clarity, the calculated conversations, the weighing of dowries, the quiet anxieties masked by polite smiles. She understood that love and financial stability often stood on opposite sides of an unbridgeable chasm. This tension reached a personal peak in December 1795. At a neighborhood dance during the Christmas season, Jane, then 20, met Thomas Lefroy, a charming and intelligent young Irish law student visiting relatives. Their connection ignited instantly. They danced repeatedly, conversed with matching wit, and shared a joy in books and ideas that felt rare and exhilarating. Jane's letters to Cassandra danced with playful energy, describing Tom's white coat, their frequent meetings, the way people began to notice their closeness. For a few radiant weeks, Possibility shimmered. Hearts seemed ready to align. But the harsh realities of their world soon intruded. Tom's prospects depended entirely on the approval of a wealthy great-uncle funding his legal education. A match with a clergyman's daughter of no fortune would jeopardize everything. Pressure mounted. Tom was called away abruptly and returned to Ireland. The two never met again. Decades later, as an elderly and distinguished Lord Chief Justice of Ireland, Tom would confess to a nephew that he had once loved Jane Austen, though he downplayed it as merely a boy's love. For Jane, the experience cut deeper. It crystallized the painful interplay of affection and economics that would pulse through every novel she wrote. The excitement of that winter dance, followed by its sudden end, became fuel for her imagination. Undaunted by disappointment, Jane poured her observations and emotions into her writing. In her early 20s, she completed drafts of what would evolve into Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. Her father attempted to sell the latter manuscript in 1797, only to receive a curt rejection without the publisher even reading it. Imagine the sting, a work destined to captivate millions dismissed unread. Yet Jane refused to surrender. She revised relentlessly, honing her prose amid the demands of family life, moves between homes, and the constant navigation of genteel poverty. Publication remained a formidable challenge. In an era when women writers risked being labeled improper or unfeminine, anonymity offered protection. When Sense and Sensibility finally reached print in 1811, it bore only the enigmatic credit "by a lady." The novel achieved modest success, earning Jane a small but precious sum of money, her first taste of financial independence. Readers praised its insight and wit. 2 years later, Pride and Prejudice exploded into popularity. Elizabeth Bennet's spirited refusal of Mr. Darcy, her intelligence, and her moral courage captured hearts. The first printing sold out swiftly. Even the Prince Regent admired her works enough to keep sets in his residences. Still, Jane maintained her secrecy. At one memorable dinner party, she sat quietly while a guest lavished praise on Pride and Prejudice, unaware the author herself was across the table, offering only a polite smile. Jane's subsequent novels, Mansfield Park and Emma, further showcased her extraordinary talent. She never wrote of grand battles or distant empires. Instead, she turned her gaze to drawing rooms, country estates, balls, and the subtle power struggles within families. Through perfectly balanced sentences and razor-sharp dialogue, she revealed character in a single exchanged glance or carefully chosen word. She exposed vanity, self-deception, pride, and quiet kindness with such precision that readers felt they knew these people intimately. A conversation at tea could carry the dramatic weight of war, a rejected proposal, the stakes of an entire life. Jane proved that the domestic sphere held profound human drama, and that a woman's inner world deserved the highest literary art. Yet success came shadowed by struggle. The Austen family faced repeated relocations after her father's retirement, financial anxieties, and the illnesses that plagued loved ones. Jane wrote in shared spaces, ever alert to interruptions, often concealing her pages beneath everyday items. She balanced creativity with domestic responsibilities, sewing, visiting, and maintaining the social graces expected of her. Proposals came, including the one from Harris Bigwither, a man of property and family connection. Jane initially accepted one evening, only to lie awake tormented by the prospect of a loveless union. The next morning, she courageously withdrew, choosing personal integrity over material comfort. This decision reinforced her path of independence, however uncertain, and deepened the emotional authenticity of her heroines. By 1816, as her fame quietly grew, Jane's health began to decline. Fatigue settled into persistent pain and mysterious weakness. Still, she worked on Persuasion, perhaps her most moving exploration of lost love and second chances, a novel infused with a tenderness that suggested she sensed time slipping away. She began another work, Sanditon, brimming with vibrant social satire, but could manage only a few chapters as her strength faded. Her once neat handwriting grew shaky. In the spring of 1817, her family brought her to Winchester in hopes of advanced medical help. The efforts proved futile. On July 18, 1817, At the age of 41, Jane Austen passed away in the arms of her beloved sister Cassandra. The exact cause remains debated by historians, possibly Addison's disease, a form of cancer, or another ailment, but the grief was immediate and profound. Cassandra described her sister as the sun of her life, the gilder of every pleasure. Jane was laid to rest in Winchester Cathedral. Her gravestone spoke of her faith, kindness, and character, but made no mention of her literary achievements, as if the world had yet to fully recognize the treasure it had lost. In the years following her death, her brother Henry ensured the publication of her remaining novels, Northanger, Abbey and Persuasion, and finally revealed her identity. What began as quiet appreciation slowly blossomed into enduring reverence. Readers and scholars came to see Jane not merely as a charming storyteller of rural society, but as a revolutionary observer of human nature. Her novels dissected the complexities of class, gender expectations, morality, and personal growth with unmatched subtlety. Elizabeth Bennet's declaration that she was resolved to act in a manner that would constitute her own happiness echoed Jane's own life choices. Today, Jane Austen stands as one of the towering figures of English literature. Her works have been translated into countless languages, adapted into films, television series, and stage productions that continue to resonate across generations. Her image graces the British 10-pound note. The modest house in Chawton where she spent her final productive years welcomes visitors from around the globe. Devoted readers who call themselves Janeites celebrate her wit, her wisdom, and her unflinching honesty about the human heart. The beautiful, poignant irony remains. The woman who understood love's joys and sacrifices more profoundly than almost any other writer never married and never experienced the full romantic fulfillment she portrayed so vividly. She danced with Thomas Lefroy on a winter evening long ago, felt the spark of genuine connection, and watched it vanish under societal pressure. She rejected a comfortable but empty future, choosing instead the freedom to write her truth. In small, hidden moments at her desk, she transformed personal restraint into universal resonance. Her words, once concealed beneath blotting paper, refused to stay hidden. They crossed oceans, centuries, and cultures, touching millions who found in her pages both laughter and profound self-recognition. Jane Austen had no grand title, no vast fortune, and no public platform in her lifetime. She worked in busy rooms, under the constant threat of interruption, publishing without her name. Yet her quiet persistence and extraordinary talent reshaped the literary landscape. She showed that careful observation, moral courage, and artistic integrity could triumph over obscurity. In an age that tried to confine women's voices, she carved out immortality through the precision of her pen. Her legacy challenges us still. In our own time of shifting expectations, economic pressures, and the search for authentic lives, Jane's story invites reflection. She reminds us that greatness often emerges not from dramatic spectacle, but from the steady accumulation of honest moments. The choice to see clearly, to feel deeply, and to create despite constraints. The woman who wrote in secret ultimately spoke to the world with unmatched clarity. What part of Jane Austen's remarkable journey touches you most deeply? The vigilant creak of that sitting room door and the manuscripts hidden beneath blotting paper? The fleeting magic of dances with a young man whose path diverged from hers? The courage to refuse a proposal that would have silenced her spirit? Or the tender final pages written as strength ebbed away? Share your thoughts in the comments. Her story continues through every reader who finds inspiration in her words. Keep observing the world around you. Keep choosing your own path with honesty and heart. The quiet power of a single determined voice can, indeed, echo forever.